Hi, and welcome to another edition of Jules Voto's Photo Focus. In a recent video, I asked the question, if you could only have one lens, what lens would that be? And my choice would be Nikon's 24-70 2.8 Z-mount zoom. And I asked people to let me know what lens they would have if they could only have one. And many people said a normal lens, a 50 or a 55 millimeter lens. And that got me to thinking. When I first got interested in photography, my first 35 millimeter camera was a Pentax H1A. I paid $104 back in 1971. And it came with a normal 55 millimeter lens. And back in those days, actually back in the 60s, 70s, when you bought a 35 millimeter camera, it usually came with a normal lens, a 50, 55, a 58, depending on the camera manufacturer. And it could be either, a 2.0 like this Takumar for the Pentax that I had, or a 1.4 or a 1.8. And then I guess when we got into autofocus cameras possibly, and I believe that was 1985 when Minolta came out with the first autofocus camera, you started to see more zooms. Zooms got better in the 70s, into the 80s, and you started to see kit lenses, especially with digital cameras. So when people buy a digital camera today, they normally don't come with a 50. If you buy a kit, it comes with a 24-70 if it's a full frame camera, or possibly an 18-55 if it's a crop sensor camera. So the 50 millimeter lens, I think more people should own today, and especially if you're a beginner. And I'll give you my reasons. When first starting out, if you have a zoom, it gives you too many choices. I think you need to learn one lens. I think it makes you a better photographer in the long run. If you start with one lens, learn that lens. Another advantage of a 50 or a 55, whatever the case may be, is the speed. A kit zoom, or even a 24-70 that comes with a full frame camera, they're usually f4. Where a kit zoom could start at, 3.3, end up at 5.6. But when you buy a 50 millimeter lens today, usually you're getting at least a 1.8, maybe a 1.4. So that enables you to shoot in lower light. And instead of worrying about zooming, you use your feet to zoom. So if you want to get closer, just walk in closer. If you need to shoot a little wider, back away. I'm not saying don't ever use a zoom or don't buy other focal lengths. Just at the beginning, a 50 millimeter lens is a good choice. A couple other reasons. They're a lot less expensive. A 50 is a lot less expensive than a zoom. Let me give you an example here. This is Nikon's 40 millimeter f2 for the Z-mount. Here is the 24-70 zoom. So it's much smaller, it's much lighter, it's much less expensive. Here is a Nikon 50 millimeter 1.8 manual focus lens, and here's a 50 millimeter 1.8 autofocus lens for the f-mount. And you can see how small these are, even smaller than this 40. Well, the 40 has a lens shade on it, but I think you get the idea. So that's another advantage of the 50. They take smaller filter sizes. This filters on these Nikon 50 and 50 millimeter lenses and the 40 millimeter lenses are 52 millimeters. The filter for the zoom is 82 millimeters, so you're going to spend more on the filters. So I think it's a really good thing to start with the 50. The 50 is close to the normal vision that we have. Actually, relates more like to maybe a 43 millimeter. Our eyes see that without scanning, that's what we see. So it's pretty close to the normal human vision. And I think learn that lens. Learn it inside and out. Know what it can do, and know that when you put that lens on your camera, what you're going to get. So if you're walking around without your camera and you see a scene, once you learn that 50mm lens, you'll be able to know that if I had my camera with my 50 right now, this is what I would capture. This is the width of the scene that I would capture. And then move on. Get yourself a zoom, or get yourself a wide angle or a telephoto. But I think for a beginner, a 50 is, in my opinion, the way to go. And if you are more advanced and you have some zooms, a 50 could come in really handy if you need to shoot in lower light, because again, it's going to be faster than the zoom. And also, if you want to do close-up photography, put an extension tube or two on the lens that will get you a lot closer without having to buy a macro lens. So the 50mm lens, I think, is underappreciated today, although some of the responses to my video on which lens would you choose if you could only have one was encouraging to me, that some people do seem to still want to have a 50mm lens. So recently I shot the Italian Market Festival in Philadelphia, and I did a video on that where I shot with my Nikon Z6 with a 28mm 3.5 Minolta lens, manual focus lens. But I also that day took my Nikon Z8 with me, and on that I had mounted a 50mm 1.4 Canon FD lens. Now, in both those cases, I had the proper adapter, a Minolta to Nikon Z adapter for the Minolta lens, and a Canon FD to Nikon Z adapter for the 50mm FD lens. As I have stated many times before, I love using manual focus lenses on a digital camera, especially on a mirrorless digital camera. They are actually easier to focus than if I had used them on a manual focus film camera. And the reason for that is that with most mirrorless cameras, you can enlarge the view in the EVF, the viewfinder, and see 100% view, so you can really focus accurately. And most mirrorless cameras have the availability of focus peaking, where when something is sharp, the edges will light up in the color of your choice. Now with the Nikon, I usually have it set for red, but you could also be in yellow or green or blue, I believe. I usually, like I said, I always have it set for red. So you just turn the focus ring until you see the red outline on your subject, and you know you're in focus. So that makes focusing a manual focus lens on a mirrorless camera, to me, easier than using it on a film camera, where you don't have that ability to enlarge the view for accurate focus. And also, I like those manual focus lenses because they have depth of field scales on them. And I explained that a little bit in my previous video talking about using Minolta 28mm wide angle. So if you have a kit zoom or a 2.8 zoom for your mirrorless camera and you want to experiment with the 50, you can go the route of a manual focus lens. You just need the proper adapter. So as always, I'd like to hear your comments, your thoughts. So leave a comment in the comments below. Let me know if your go-to lens is a zoom. Do you also carry a 50 with you for those low light situations, or just to keep things simple, or just to keep your camera and lens combination lighter than putting on a zoom? So let me know what you think. Okay, so that's it for this video. If you like it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I usually publish a new video every Monday morning and Wednesday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So I will talk to you next time.